Well, joining me now to talk more about this, giving us some insight on the status of the health of the nation, is Dr. Ben Carson, the world-renowned neurosurgeon, former U.S. Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and now founder of the American Cornerstone Institute. Dr. Carson, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you. It's always great to be with you. And as I was listening to you talking there, thinking about how rapidly things are, in fact, changing in our nation, I think most people are kind of like deer caught in the headlights, because it was really sort of a bait and switch during the election. You know, it was thought that President Biden was going to be a moderate, and in fact, he is way over on the left side. And the reason that they abandoned Bernie Sanders is they thought that somebody that far to the left could not be elected. So it was a definite bait and switch. And I think the American people recognize what has happened to them. But I think that's also the reason that they're moving so swiftly to try to get as much done as they possibly can before people recognize what's going on. What you mentioned about, you know, the family plan and some of these other bills that they're going to be putting forth is really somewhat alarming, because the amount of money that we are borrowing is staggering. It's almost unimaginable. And that, of course, is exactly what needs to happen in order for them to justify massive taxation and redistribution of the wealth. So, you know, it's all going according to their plans. And it's one of the reasons that we need to be praying right now, because, you know, the radical element has more control than they've had in quite some time. And we need some intervention by God, as well as brave individuals. Courage is going to be the key that will preserve freedom in this country. If people are not courageous, our freedom will be lost. But if they are, we will be able to withstand the things that are going on right now.
Well, you mentioned the bait and switch that took place, and I mean, too bad the consumer protection laws don't apply to politics, because they certainly did pull a fast one. But I think, Dr. Carson, that this has gotten people's attention, maybe a little too late. But like I was honored to join you earlier today for a National Day of Prayer call, and we had thousands of people join that call. I think there is an urgency, a sense of urgency, and people are wanting to pray. They're wanting to know how they can make a difference. And so it does begin with prayer. And I think you saw that in the Trump administration, the number of people praying for our country. And I think that explains why we were able to get so much done. The courage mixed with the prayers resulted in some remarkable achievements.
Well, there were multiple occasions during the previous administration that yourself and many other faith leaders came to the Oval Office, prayed with and for the president, prayed with and for our country. And, you know, those things are very much appreciated. I think they made a big impression upon the president. Some people say, no, but he's so mean and coarse. Can you imagine what he'd be like if we didn't have the prayers? What's going on? But I think those kinds of things really make us stop and think about our Judeo-Christian roots, our foundations. And really, those were the things that made us a successful country. The fact that people were willing to work together, you know, to work with your neighbor, to love your neighbor, not necessarily to be 100% in agreement with your neighbor about everything, but that completely isn't necessary. If two people believe the same about everything, one of them isn't necessary. And everybody is necessary. So, you know, let's cultivate a healthy respect for other people's opinions. You know, even these wild leftist radicals, I don't begrudge them their opinion. They're welcome to that opinion. What I do begrudge is them trying to shut up everybody else so that other sides can't be heard, so that people can't make a fair judgment about what they believe.
You know, Dr. Carson, I'm grateful that the Biden administration, the president, put out a proclamation today for the National Day of Prayer. Actually, put out last night, and this is going to sound critical, and it's not intended to be critical. It's just an observation. I mean, one of the things that was remarkable about the Trump administration was the clarity to which he spoke to issues, and there was no hiding. And of course, you're a prime example of this. You never hid your faith, even as the role of secretary. You were criticized for it, but you never hid it. But in this proclamation, we don't even mention God. There's no mention of a God. I just want to quote one of the paragraphs. It says, "Today we remember and celebrate the role that the healing balm of prayer can play in our lives and in the life of our nation. As we continue to confront the crisis and challenges of our time, from a deadly pandemic to the loss of lives and livelihood in its wake, to a reckoning on racial justice, to the existential threat of climate change, Americans of faith can call upon the power of prayer to provide hope and uplift us for the work ahead." I mean, again, I'm not wanting to be critical, but we don't call upon the power of prayer. We use prayer to call upon the power of God.
Of God. That's exactly right. And you know, there have always been people who've tried to diminish God in our nation. And so many of the historians and other people have said that our founders weren't really ardent believers in God. They were deists, which are people who believe that maybe there is a God, but he has nothing to do with the affairs of men. And all you have to do is go back and read some of the writings of some of those founders. You know, Adams said that, you know, our system was designed for a religious people, was wholly inadequate for any others. Read about all of George Washington's prayers, the things that Benjamin Franklin had to say, even Thomas Jefferson. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, it's our relationship with God has been the thing that made this into a great country, that really distinguished us from the others. And I think which allowed us to receive enormous blessings from God. And that's what took us from, you know, a bunch of ragtag militiamen to the pinnacle of the world. Now we're kind of treading water.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's, you know, questionable which direction we're going to go in. But I believe that the majority of people in our country, even though the latest statistics show only 46% of people identify with a church anymore, I'm not sure that's a completely accurate statement. It depends on how you ask that question. Do you believe in God? Do you have a relationship with God? Which is a very different question than whether or not you're affiliated with a specific church. And there are a lot of people who have a deep relationship with God, but aren't necessarily connected to a church.
Yeah, I think part of that, Dr. Carson, is that some churches have become more influenced by the culture than committed to influencing the culture with the truth, and people just say, you know, what's the point? And they're finding other places, especially in the wake of the virus. Many people have connected with Bible preaching churches online and have dropped out of some of the denominational churches.
That's exactly right. And, you know, I belong to a couple of groups, and, you know, we continue to grow and have very good relationships. And I think that's probably happening to a lot of groups electronically, and that will continue to be the case.
Yeah.
So we just need to push the ideal of godly principles on people.
And encourage people to pray, to encourage people to come together to pray for the nation in small groups in their churches, wherever. Dr. Carson, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us today. And thank you for staying in the battle for the heart and soul of our nation and not, you know, checking out, saying, I've done my time, I'm moving on. You're still in the battle, and we're grateful for it.
Absolutely. And thank you for participating this morning in the National Prayer Call. It was fantastic what you had to say.
Happy to do it. Dr.